My name is Monika Gorska, and I am a co-founder of Mindfuture World, a full-service esport and gaming agency from London, and a Fluid.life platform that connects global brands like Coca-Cola, Huel, Razer, and more with influencers, content creators, streaming on Twitch, Facebook gaming, or YouTube gaming. I'm a businesswoman with previous experience in sports marketing and events for over a decade. I'm a Women in Games member and a mom of 3 children. Welcome to our 4th episode of Fluid Podcast. Today, I have a very special guest, a true leader, an amazing woman, a mom, and first of all, the president of National Esports Association from United States of America, Lori Bajorek. Lori and I met on one of the esports and Women in Games seminars last year, and we connected on LinkedIn. So I decided to invite Lori to our Fluid podcast as I believe we share some common ideas and views about the esports and gaming, and I'd love to explore those today. So Lori, I'm super excited to have you as my guest, and I believe you are a true leader in the esports and gaming world, which is still dominated by male. So I wanted to ask you some questions. Why esports? Probably you've heard it many times, and this is like number one question for you. But why esports? Why this is the future, and why now?
It's really funny that you actually asked that, because I do get asked that question a lot. And, I could go back to see the evolution that I've been in esports before it was even a word. And really what we are all about at the National Esports Association is really truly pushing the envelopes of how we're educating our youth. And I always tell this story, if anybody's ever listened to any of things that I talk about, it's why Microsoft put the game Solitaire on every computer. It was not to have us do something to pass the time. It was to teach us how to use a new device called the mouse. And esports is one of those things, if you look beyond the game, and if you look at how we're educating our youth and where we're looking to go, information and technology is being thrown at us like on a daily basis. It changes. And one of the ways that we can actually utilize and help to gain access to information, obviously, is on the computer. But how are we training, and how are we looking at this, and how are we actually helping our youth be the leaders of tomorrow? So 12 years ago, when it's funny you said you transitioned, my background's child psychology. And I was looking at my son, who was in kindergarten, and wanting him to really advance. We all think our children are superstars at a young age, but I really believe that my son was. And they offered extracurricular activities in chess and in yoga. And I said, had you met my son? Not going to work. And he discovered a game called Minecraft. And this is before it was known by, it was in beta form. And I started looking at this in the developmental ways of spatial manipulation, and really looking at how can I use this to motivate him in a learning atmosphere. And we really started working hard on that. And I started developing STEM education programs. I was working at the time with Lego. And then I went into working on transitioning from, using your hands to actually manipulating space online and using Minecraft. And then it just has evolved over the years, and really looking at pathways to success. And why I think it's so important, let's put us in the context of today. 2021, we just went through a year of a global pandemic where everything shut down. Education shut down, entertainment shut down. The one thing that did not shut down was online gaming and how we're actually communicating. Gamers have been telecommunicating for years. And yet now I'm on a podcast with someone from Spain, and really looking at how the globe is actually looking at how we're communicating, and really making the world a much more inclusive environment without borders.
Exactly. So you mentioned the game Minecraft. I have 2 boys, age 7 and 6. And they playing racing games like sim racing, like Formula One and Forza. They haven't played Minecraft yet, but from what I know and from what I see, this is not an easy game.
It's funny. I will tell you, my other passion is sim racing and Formula One and NASCAR here in America. Because again, really the skills and transform into the real world. when you go to Minecraft, so what I always love about Minecraft is it is a virtual sandbox. So you can build anything that you want, and your imagination is your only limitation. So is it a hard game? Not really. Once you get into it, I always kid when I first started playing with Legos, it was mind-boggling, like how are we actually going to build these spaceships and all those other things. But once you start utilizing it and really sinking your teeth into it, it becomes this amazing experience that expands your mind. And that's what I really like about esports in general, is pushing the envelope and really using it to train your mind on how to problem solve, how to do spatial manipulation. If you look at Sims Racing, you're learning, things that take years to acquire on the road in a more dangerous environment, but it's rote learning is a different way because it's about muscle memory. And that's what you're doing. So if your children haven't played the game of Minecraft, they definitely need to explore it, because it is, like I said, it's just a sandbox and you can do anything you want in that world.
You mentioned about the pandemic and how it affected esport and how we actually interact. So most of the meetings are held via Zoom. This is obvious. This is the new reality. But also during the pandemic and the lockdowns we had here, mostly in London, we've been in lockdown since December. And 2 days ago, they actually unlock cities in England and in Wales as well. So my children, they actually are sports fans, and they are passionate about racing generally and about karting, right? They were practicing a lot. They were racing. They were actually having a chance to take part in competition. Leo actually won some championships there in England. And then we had this lockdown. So we had to think what we need to do now, what we can do now to still be able to practice, to train, to gain skills, and take advantage over the others, right? To be able to win and to race. So we actually developed and built a simulator, and we were practicing at home every day, on this Formula One and Forza. And I actually found as a mom that gaming is not bad, right? They can still learn a set of skills, which then they can actually use competitive advantage, right? With the other boys. And this is what I love about gaming.
Well, it's funny. Before the pandemic, I was actually in London meeting with Formula One. And if you look at what Formula One has done in Sims Racing through the pandemic, and some of their racers are actually being trained, like you just said, with simulators. And I was at the Microsoft store in London, and
they have McLaren there.
Oh my God, I want one.
And you drove one.
Oh yeah, I'm totally obsessed. I'm like, I want the McLaren. And then I was on the phone last week with the NASCAR, and I saw Michael Jordan's car, and I'm like, I want to take this on tour. Like, this is the coolest thing ever. There's one of the things that I love about esports, and what you just kind of talked about, is giving people an experience that they wouldn't normally be able to have. So sitting in a McLaren and racing it is an experience, and being able to see and be part of something that seemed unobtainable before. And if you look at where the point of entry used to be to become a Formula One racer, that's an expensive endeavor that not everybody can actually look at. But now that they've opened it up and started using Sims Racing and really looking at how are we expanding our market and utilizing the skill sets that you can do as a result of a computer game. But it's not just Sims Racing. Look what they're doing with drones and what they're doing in the military and what you're doing that's beyond it, even in terms of, surgery being performed using a joystick, and all these skills that we take for granted. And being, I love the fact that you mentioned being a mom. I always kind of kid, that's what, I am first and foremost, but I have a 17 and a 22-year-old now. But how can we help our youth really gain those skills that are transferable in the real world, but also help them follow their passions and let them understand where you can go with something that you love. And it's, we say at the National Esports Association, it's more than the game. The game is what starts the conversation. It's where you take it. And as a parent, 2 years ago, parents would be like, well, I want my child off of the computer. And I said, well, if they were practicing basketball for 6 hours a day, would you take away their basketball? But you have to set limitations, and you have to set goals, and you have to set healthy gaming habits, just like we set with everything else in our lives. But what you did, taking a pandemic and creating an environment that they can still learn and prosper, and setting those expectations. And I loved what you said about setting up a winning attitude. Training your brain to win is an amazing tool, and being able to do that and using it through esports, it's a way you don't become a winner, you train yourself to become a winner.
Exactly. And life is a game, right? And it's not about winning, it's about not giving up. And we have to train, we have to practice to become better and better. And this is the whole idea in life, right? What would you say to parents about esports and gaming? How they should consider it and what they can do to support their children?
That's another number one question I get asked all the time. And this is my generation, we raised these gamers, right? We handed them, when they were infants, our iPhone and let them watch a show, or we gave them something to entertain themselves. And yet we weren't actually thinking about what it is that we wanted the result to be, right? We wanted them to be entertained so we could get our job done, or we're at dinner and we wanted them to behave, right? As opposed to giving those social skills. And I kind of kid now when I take my 17-year-old out to dinner, right? What's he doing? He's playing on his iPhone. I created that, right? I didn't create conversation with them. So one of the things that I think is the most important is to really interact with your child and get involved. We mentioned Minecraft. That's a perfect example, is learn the game, sit down with them, watch what they've built, ask questions, and then also help and give them challenges that inspire them, because they're going to want, children love show and tell. And even adults do. When you do something great, you want to brag about it. You want to show somebody. The same thing if your child is liking any video game, partake in it, see if he's streaming it, watch the game, and learn the game, sit down and play it. You can't understand why a child is obsessed with something if you don't know the rules of the game. But partake in it the same way you partake in any other sport. If your child loves basketball, you're at every basketball game that child's ever in. If your child's a dancer, you're at every recital they're ever in. If they play the piano, if they're at a tennis match, you're there. But video games, we are not observing our children's victories with them. We're not embracing and enjoying it. And being part of it. And if they're doing something where they're doing an online game, watch it. Most of the stuff is streamed, and ask them questions and look at their statistics and let them show you what they're doing. You're going to notice a conversation that you've never probably had before, and you're going to see this amazing joy come out of a child. And we're not just talking children that are 5 years old. I have students in college who just were like, I wish you would talk to my mom or my dad and explain to them that this is real to me, this is something that's important to me. And in the States, you can get scholarships for playing video games.
That's amazing.
Yeah, that's what I do all the time. I'm at colleges talking with them about their esports programs and thinking about things that are beyond the game and skill sets that you're learning. So that's the joy of my life, is going out there and actually seeing what the youth is doing, and where they want to go, and helping them to get beyond that stereotype that not all gamers are eating cheese puffs and drinking Mountain Dew in their parents' basements, right? They have aspirations, they have desires, and they have goals. And once you start talking to them about it, they're the most brilliant students on the planet. And that's what I get inspired by every day.
Yes, that's true. We have to educate parents, right? This is all about education, and the esport and gaming is not only about entertainment, it's about education, right? When you said your organization is supporting educating students, educating children, right? We have to do the same with the parents, right? I wasn't aware 2 years ago about, the benefits of esport, benefits of gaming, because children can learn subconsciously, right? They're learning subconsciously. They don't have to sit and just, learn it by heart. they do it because they love it. It's something exciting for them. And, we still have at schools this old school learning patterns, right? Although my children and most of the children nowadays in primaries, they have iPads. They have some games, they have some nice programs, they can get points. So the gamification is there, which is great. But yes, I think we have to educate parents, and also we have to educate brands, because when we talk about esport and gaming, I talk with the CEOs, marketing directors of most of the blue chip companies globally, and we still have to educate them about the benefits, why this is the time to invest and to explore esports and gaming. We're educating them about the audience, the average age of the gamer is actually 25 years old. So we're not only talking about children, we also talk about adults, right? Which is a perfect target audience for any company. So it's all about education.
I use the expression hit the nail on the head. When we're talking with, in America, the K through 12 market, so your primary schools, and then also going on to the collegiate level, really also educating the administrators and the people on the boards, right? Why is it that you need to invest in esports on your campus? And even just, why is it that I would actually go in and start with a kindergartner teacher and explain to them the benefits of why you want to have Minecraft in your classroom. And we've done all these programs over the years and shown student engagement is paramount to success in education. And if you go back to what we all talk about in the globe right now, keywords, inclusion, diversity, equality, right? Gaming is one of those things that expands all of those markets. And when we talk about equality and creating a global world where we are inclusive and diverse, we have to start with the word that you keep saying over and over again, which is education. Education is the thing that makes us equal, and being able to do what we're doing right now and talk across, global lines, right? And not having the limitations and having the expectations of success, and collaborate on these very new and forward thinking. But we have to change the way that we're educating our youth, because youth is gathering information quicker than we can actually teach them about it. So they can't be ahead of us. We have to be ahead of them, and understanding why we want to put this back into the educational system. And children and adults, everybody, we learn by play. Play is work. It is not a recreation. It is how we actually motivate ourselves. There's reasons why we're obsessed with sports. There's reasons why we're obsessed with gameplay. It's the way that our brain actually finds enjoyment, so that you can actually practice something over and over again to become an expert at it. So, that's not the fun part of my job, but that's the thing that I want to really emphasize, and working globally on how do we actually educate parents, administrators, school administrators, and also what you talked about, the government. What does this actually mean if we want to get this to the Olympics? There's so many moving parts in esports, but we're getting there.
I think we are closer than ever with the esports, and thanks to pandemia, if I can say that. Right. So, Lori, you said in the interview beginning of this year, on the 25th of January, I believe, that esport is to play with a purpose. What does it mean, playing with a purpose? If you can elaborate on this one.
Actually, that's the thing that I think my students don't enjoy, is I always try to find the secret of why you want to play this game and what is the benefit that we can get out of it. So you have to have a purpose of why you're sitting down to play a game, not just to waste time. Passing time, in my opinion, is idle time, and you need to think about, what does this do that's going to benefit me? And what can I do to better myself in this game? So what I mean by play with a purpose is, yes, if you like the game Fortnite, you want to sit down, you want to get better at the game. But then also, how long are you going to play the game for? What is the next step that you can actually take with this game? And maybe it's just right now, your play with the purpose is you want to play with your friends, right? That is a purpose. And the purpose is that I want to socialize, and I want to play with somebody, right? That's building those soft skills. Then there might be a time that you want to play because you want to compete to win something, so you want to show your skill sets. So it's the same thing when I look at when you start playing basketball, you might start with just some dribbling exercises. Then you might actually start practicing your free throws. And then what you want to play just a couple games with your friends, right? But the ultimate goal is you probably want to compete, right? And you want to go out there. Or if you're not the one that wants to compete, you want to go to a game and watch someone who's better than you are. You know, those are things that you don't realize that are happening in the esports arena, because people are watching content, players that are better than them. They're using it as a socialization tool to play with their friends when you can't during a pandemic. And also, you know, just the limitations of meeting people around the globe. That's another thing that I think is incredibly important. And then also, what are the things that you can do that are beyond the game that you actually translated from playing that game into other purposes? So it's complex, but they're doing it anyways. I just kind of show them the direction that it's going. And then also understanding, like, you have to say to yourself, I'm going to do this for a certain length of time. And then you have to do what we call a reboot. So in other words, if you're playing a video game, you can't sit there for 6 hours. You're damaging your body. You need to say, I'm going to do this for 50 minutes, and then I'm going to get up and do something else. Or if I lose a game, I'm going to, like, instead of throwing a temper tantrum, which we've all probably witnessed one of our children doing, drop and give me 20, right? So you're going to go down and give me some push-ups. So you instill it in their bodies and in their systems of, this is how I react when I lost, and this is how I'm going to react when I win. So that goes back to the whole thing of training your brain to be successful, and then understanding that every loss is also an opportunity to learn.
Yes, that's a perfect example. You have to learn how to win and how to lose with grace as well, because life is not always about winning. It's also about losing, right? And this builds you, this builds abilities and skills necessary in life. So playing with a purpose, like having a purpose in your life is always number one. So you have to know why you do things. So Lori, let's talk about women in games. You are a member of Women in Games, and that's great. So it's still a fraction. And what we see is that women are lacking the abilities to play games. This is the main challenge for them, that they talk about, you know, lacking those abilities. So how we can build confidence in them to engage and to actually start playing games?
That's actually one of my biggest passions. If I always tell the story to, 12 years ago when we started doing enrichment activities, I would have a mom call up and say she wanted her daughter in our program. And I would have to explain she's going to be the only girl in the room, probably besides myself and the other educators, but we're going to make her feel extra special and make sure that she feels it's a safe environment, because that's the number one cue. And if you look at STEM education and even STEAM, why do women and girls drop out in America? It's always the transition between middle school and high school. And it is all about mentoring, and it's about making sure they feel safe in that room. It's a very risky time in a female's life during that transition, because you're trying to figure it out, right? And you're not having those female mentors. And it's so important. And one of the things that I took for granted when I became the president of the National Esports Association was my role of being a female in a position of power. And I'm used to it because I've been doing it so long. So I'm conditioned to certain things that happen as a result of walking into the room and being the only woman. That's intimidating for a lot of people if you've never done it before.
It is.
And, then you have to walk into a room and then you have to have a voice. So how do you have a voice? And that's about training, young females at a very young age to understand when you walk in the room, how do you feel safe? And then when you feel safe, how do you then feel heard? And that's all about really being in the room and helping to get those confidences at a young age. And I kind of kid, if you see my hair, it's a leftover from my days of being a ballerina. So when I was a ballerina, you have to walk in and you have to present yourself on stage. and gather the attention of an audience without being heard, right? So it's a really interesting analogy that I started looking at life of why can I walk into a room and not have a voice, but still be heard? And then once you actually have the attention to then utilize that power so that you actually can achieve what you wanted to achieve when you came into the room to begin with. And that's to garner an audience that hears you and sees you and wants to be part of your journey. And that all has to do with training. So to go back to your story of how do you get more females involved in gaming? So we did that through mentorship and making sure that when I hired educators, we were also hiring females, and making sure that they understood, this is important. And if there is only one female in the room, that we're going to gravitate towards her and we're going to make her feel like a celebrity. And as a result of that, you went from 1 in the room to 2 in the room to now also when we had a classroom of 36, it was an equal 18. And then it got to the point where sometimes we had more females than we did males. And that is 1000% as a result of nurturing and providing an environment where you can win. And that's not just with females, that has to do with anybody who feels that they're a minority in a majority room, and acknowledging that and creating those pathways that they feel safe, and then letting them have a voice. And it sounds so easy because it is, but it's not easy to be that first female that walks in that room.
For sure.
Minority in any
totally agree. Also that esport is equalizer, right? I totally agree with that because esports is for everybody, right? You can be disabled and you can still be in this competitive world and you can win. You can enjoy, you can socialize with your friends, you can have new friends and you can have basically new life, right? So esports is for sure, we should have more females, right? We should have more women role models to motivate others and basically increase the female community. This is what I like the most about Women in Games organization, right? Having this community and being a part of this community helps us a lot to share the views, share insecurities, talk about how we can change things. I think personally that this is a great initiative and we're going to support it as well as Fluid and as Mindfuture. We're also having more and more females subscribe to our platform, and I'm encouraging them to grow their channel and earn more money because at the end of the day, we help streamers to earn more from the campaigns so they can grow with us. And growing together, I believe, is the most important. Lori, what is your dream?
That's my question I ask people. I love to ask people what the dream is. There's been several changes in my life that look at the dream, but the ultimate thing that I want to see happen is really truly changing the way that we're educating our youth and actually opening up doors in those pathways. I want to be that person that kind of inspires our youth to think beyond the box, and to push their limits, and to talk about their passions and be those leaders that we so desperately need. If you look at what's happening in the world today, we are pushing envelopes that really have been needed to be brought to the forefront. And who thought that esports was going to be that little catalyst that can help create change? We've hit on some really, interesting topics that normally we kind of skated away from in the past. What does it really mean to be an equal society? How do we use inclusion and diversity? And how do we create a global world where we all feel that we can win? There are so many obstacles we still have to overcome. But at the same time, if we're utilizing the skill sets that we have and starting the conversation, that's how we're going to create change. And that's how we're going to make the world a better place so that the next generation, your children, are not going to be having the same conversations that we had. If we just keep on the subject of women in general, in America, you're talking when women got the right to vote and you have glass ceilings. And I wouldn't say I had a blind eye to it for the last couple of years because of my career path. I wasn't experiencing it, but now you're starting to hear like the Me Too movement. And so many of these things are out there. Let's continue the conversation. My dream is to have, a world that is diverse and inclusive, where people follow their dreams and their passions. Because if we can actually show our youth that you're only limited by your imagination, think of the amazing things that they're going to do. Because in marginalized parts of the world, it's the truth. They don't know how to dream because there isn't a pathway for them to understand that their dreams can come true. And that just takes a mindset. And if just winning a game of Fortnite, or winning a game of, NBA 2K, or talking with someone who's actually used something that they're passionate about to become an expert in, and they're being exposed to this. And that says to you, like, tell me your dream and let me help you make your dreams come true, because they can. I always say this, the only reason you won't achieve your dream is if you quit. If you want it bad enough, you will do whatever it takes. And we call it the Princess Peach rule. Think about the first time you played. Did you go rescue Princess Peach? Nope. But you went in and you tried again. You didn't stop, right? You figured it out. You found out ways you can do it. You're like, wow, I didn't know I could do that. And using that skill set in a game such as, Smash Bros. Or rescuing Princess Peach, and putting that rule into life. Like, what do you want out of your life? And what can you do to achieve it? And who's going to stop you? The only person that stops you is you. But we have to really embrace that with the youth and start at a very young age, and start to practice and teach them, what do you want? What are you passionate about? And ask that dream, like, what's the dream? I loved it. You asked me that. I have
Thank you.
World domination in esports, but it's not really. It really just has to do with the more youth that we can reach, and the more people that I can just say, ask them that question: what is your dream, and how are you going to make it come true?
Thank you very much for that, Lori. You said also in one of the interviews that we need more Elon Musks. Right. And this is what we need. We need to use our imagination, and we need to educate children and students how to dream and how to set goals, then how to achieve those goals, and how to become a better person. Right. Because at the end of the day, it's all about becoming better and better in everything we do. Right. We all should have our goals and the path to success. Lori Bajorek, the President of National Esports Association. Thank you very much for listening.
It was truly a pleasure. Thank you very much.
Thank you.